Welcome to Wellspring on the Air, where professional Christian counselors share practical life and biblical insights because hearts and minds matter. My name is Mario de Armas, a therapist at Wellspring, and joining me today is Carmine Vidana, who's going to discuss a very relevant topic known as conflict resolution. Welcome, Carmine.
Thank you, Mario. So good to be here with you. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I've been at Wellspring. I've had the privilege of working with Wellspring for 6 years. I am trained in the Gottman method for couples therapy, as well as EMDR for trauma. I treat couples as well as adult individuals struggling with trauma, depression, anxiety, or other stressors people may be experiencing in life.
Excellent. And mentioning, the Gottman method and
Yes.
broaching this topic of conflict resolution, it would start off appropriately to define what conflict is. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, sure. Yes. According to Webster's dictionary, conflict is a competitive or opposing action of incompatibles, or an antagonistic state or action as of divergent ideas, interests, or persons. Conflict is the stuff of life. Take when an issue arises, partners are often on opposing sides. An issue or problem needs to be solved or at least understood. This is extremely challenging because marriage is a union of two distinct individuals with different personalities, opinions, and backgrounds. Male and female were very different. Therefore, conflict is going to happen. We should expect it. We are going to have to deal with it. However, the way we handle conflict is what's most important. The goal then is to help couples process these inevitable fights and hurt feelings and repair the relationship. Connecting with and understanding each other is the key, not trying to control each other.
That is such a crucial statement in terms of getting to know your significant other, your spouse,
Yes.
and connecting as opposed to controlling. And I'm sure you've run into so many scenarios where control was the predominant aspect of it.
Yes. And I think, to be honest, most of our tendencies, are to control. We really do want to control. We have to learn to connect. And that's definitely something that's important to do. The 2 C's, connect or control. You're not going to be able to do both at the same time. It's one or the other. And
Absolutely.
Connect definitely is the better option.
Absolutely. And the option that oftentimes entails more vulnerability as well, but
oh, sure,
definitely falls in line with the resolution part of.
That's right. And the resolution, according to Webster, is something that is resolved. In this case, what is resolved? Well, the goal is to resolve the conflict. However, this may not always be the case because marriages consist of 2 distinct individuals with different personalities, opinions, and backgrounds. Add to that the Bible clearly states that we are sinners who want our own way. We are selfish people. However, there is scientific research that leads to great hope. Dr. John Gottman is a renowned American researcher and clinician. He's the president of the Gottman Institute. He's done extensive research on relationship stability and divorce prediction. He can predict with 94% accuracy who will divorce by watching them interact over a disagreement. This is amazing. His research found that most problems are perpetual. That is, they are recurring and not solvable, in his words. Dr. Gottman found that 69% of problems are perpetual, ongoing, not solvable. So that leaves 31% that are solvable. Perpetual problems cannot be solved, but the good news is that couples can understand each other's point of view, leading to compromise. It's an important word there, Mario, compromise. Negotiation makes compromise possible. And the way in which couples approach conflict is a predictor of divorce.
I'm so glad you said that there is a solution and that you mentioned compromise, because upon hearing that perpetual problems really can't be changed per se, you think, well, where's the hope then? If that's something that can't necessarily be maneuvered,
Right.
adjusted,
Yeah.
and you seem deflated before you even tackle the problem. So I would ask
Yes.
you, can you give us an example of what a perpetual problem?
Sure, and be glad to. Take fundamental differences in personalities. Okay, let's say an introvert marries an extrovert. A common struggle may be the introvert wants to stay home a lot to recharge alone or with the partner.
Mhm.
However, the extrovert wants to recharge with other people or by entertaining. This will always be a perpetual problem, don't you think, Mario?
Oh, no doubt about it, because I can envision the introvert wanting to just have a movie night in a very calm atmosphere, while the extrovert wants to go to a family get together or a friend's house, pockets of
Right,
conversation,
right.
much
Sure.
more interactive.
Right. And there's no right or wrong. It's just they're different, right? So this is going to be perpetual. However, a practical compromise might look like once a month they entertain together. Once a month, the extrovert goes out with his or her friends, right? There's a compromise there. The point is that just because couples encounter differences or perpetual problems does not mean they cannot make their relationship work and be happy.
Yeah.
I think that's really the point here. Also, Dr. Gottman's research revealed the most obvious indicator that a discussion, argument is not going well is the way it starts. There are two types of argument startups: a harsh startup or a soft, gentle startup. A harsh startup begins with criticism or contempt. If the harsh startup continues more than 3 minutes, there will be no resolution. That's what research showed. However, you can change into a soft startup if you catch yourself. If you don't, there will be a harsh ending to the argument.
Mm.
Now, a gentle or soft startup begins with I statements. I need, I feel, versus a harsh startup is you never, you always. It's more condemning.
Absolutely, because I've seen the way an argument escalates is indicative of how it starts. So
Exactly.
if
Right.
I begin with, you always do this,
Oh, yeah. Right.
it sets the tone, and
It
then
sets the tone. Right.
all of a sudden I'm reactive because I feel attacked.
Yes. And we've all been there. We've all been there, done that. It's just, a change of course
Yeah,
of I instead of you.
it's such a small detail, but so
Such a
significant.
small, but it's very significant. Right. Now, Dr. Gottman also found that there are 4 kinds of negativity which predict divorce, and he calls these forms of demeaning behavior the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And in combination, they are the forerunners of the end of a relationship. They are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling.
Hmm. Wow, this seems like a very substantial part of the conversation and a sign of its demise when we speak of the relationship. So,
Right.
that being the case, how would you define these terms, which are part of the Four Horsemen?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Criticism expresses negative feelings or opinions about the other's character or personality. You can complain, but don't blame.
So, something to the extent of, you always forget, or you never do anything to care about me. would be under that category.
That's right. Right. There you see, there's the you. We've got that harsh startup, right? Right. There.
Right.
Now, the next one is the most wicked horseman of the four, which is contempt. This is what the research showed. And contempt is a sense of superiority over your partner. It's a blatant form of disrespect. Examples include demeaning your partner, eye rolling, right? You think you deserve everything because you're spoiled. That would be an example. Now, it's similar to criticism, but contempt viciously attacks the character of your partner, not just his or her behavior. It's criticism on steroids.
Yeah. So it's not just you did this, but you are XYZ.
Right. And a lot of that eye rolling and just maybe even turning your, moving your head back and forth and just communicating rejection. I think a lot of it is a rejection of the person, and that's why it's the worst. It's the worst of the four.
Which prompts a question in me: how bad does the resentment have to be at that point for there to be pure contempt?
Right. Well, that's a good question, Mario, and it all depends, right? Because it can develop early on if the couple has not learned to resolve conflict, to communicate, right, to be respectful. Sometimes it can show up pretty early in the relationship.
And it's not addressed, it's deflected. It isn't confronted at that moment and continues to augment. It's interesting too with defensiveness, like you had mentioned something about righteous indignation when it comes to that part.
That's right. Yes. Defensiveness is a form of self-protection, righteous indignation. It really keeps pressure off of you and prevents you and your couple, partner, from getting down to the issue at hand. The opposite of defensiveness is to take responsibility for your actions. Yeah. Can you think of some examples of defensive statements that come to your mind, Mario?
Yeah, something to the extent of, why are you picking on me? You never say anything nice about me. Or what are you talking about?
Yeah, those are great. Those are exactly what they are. They're just, sort of back at you, deflecting. I don't want to talk about the issue, and I'm not going to talk about the issue, and let's talk about you, right?
Right.
Now, the last horseman, yeah, right. The last horseman is called stonewalling. And this is where a partner turns out or shuts down, just really doesn't want to deal with it, with the issue or conflict, avoidant behavior, disengagement from partner. An example would be getting up and leaving the room and stating, I don't want to talk about it. Just sort of cut it off. Now, this is not the same as needing some time to cool off and then come back and target the issue. That can actually be a good thing. If we are so upset, we call it flooding, where we can't even think, it's very good, it's advisable to get away for maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. But the issue with stonewalling is that it goes on for 24 hours or more. And it can sometimes, in worst case scenarios, be used as a punishment towards the partner. Ugly, isn't it?
It is, especially if you have a temperament that wants to talk about it immediately.
Yes.
And now, not only are you denying them that, you're extending that, thus hurting the person even more. Right.
That's why so much in with couples, with partners, is communication, learning these skills, learning that it's okay to take a breather. One of the partners may have to have that breather, but coming back to the table and then discussing it.
Because I stated, listen, I need this time away so that I could come back to you more present. So I've already clarified that, as opposed to just withdrawing. And that's the dangerous part of this.
That's a good clarification. That's right. That's
Wow.
right. So there they are, Mario, the Gottman predictors of divorce, harsh startups, and the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Well, we are going to elaborate a little bit more when we come back. This has been a very interesting discussion and how all this plays out, and we'll return to conclude and with some final thoughts. Thank you so much.
Okay, sure.
Welcome back to Wellspring on the Air. My name is Mario de Armas, here with Carmine Vidana, discussing the interesting topic of conflict resolution. So far, we've covered the different temperaments and how at times, because of cultural situations and gender differences, there are different approaches and responses. And then we got into the Four Horsemen, something that Gottman was very well known for. And I actually want to continue on there, Carmine. I find it so fascinating. As you said earlier, Gottman is pretty good at predicting potential divorce with 94% accuracy, of which couples will divorce by watching them interact over a disagreement. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Yes, you're not kidding. It was just his research was just on the forefront. It's been all over the world. He's renowned, and it helps to know what works and what doesn't work. And as you said earlier, we're talking about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and that's criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And every couple probably has had these at times. That's not what we're talking about here. You know, once in a blue moon, once in a while. However, if these four are present to a large degree, they are strong predictors of divorce, a red flag that your relationship needs help or it may end badly. Not
Mm,
necessarily divorce, but no real connection or love in the marriage.
mm,
Just as the four horsemen in the book of Revelations were harbingers of the end of the world as we know it, these four behaviors can signal the end of a marriage. Criticism, contempt, and defensiveness all have to do with our words. God in the Bible gives us many verses to guide us in building relationships with the way we speak and dialogue with others. Here's some of God's wisdom found in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 10:19 tells us, when words are many, sin is not absent, but he who holds his tongue is wise. Proverbs 18:4 encourages us that a person's words can be life-giving water. Words of true wisdom are as refreshing as a bubbling brook. What an analogy.
it is. It is an
Mhm.
excellent analogy. And the book of James is striking to me regarding the taming tongue. Chapter 3, verses 3 through 5 discusses the taming of the tongue and how the
Yeah.
tongue, for good or for ill, is
Mm.
is one that is very impactful.
Very, very. That's right.
Wow. And it states the following. It says, when we put bits into the mouth of horses to make them obey us, we could turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a great verse. There are so many verses, Mario, in the Bible about our speech. The book of Proverbs is full of it. You just read James, and it seems like the Lord knew we would struggle in this area, especially with those we are closest to. We really do need to learn to tame our tongue, and we can with God's grace and wisdom. But we do need to be in the Word. We need to be saturated with God's Word.
Mm, absolutely. And going back to what you said about sinfulness, sin in Hebrew means to miss the mark. So what is the goal of speech? What is the goal of communication? To affirm the other.
Yeah, to connect, to build up, love,
Ultimately.
right? Now, according to Gottman's research, there are 5 practical things we can do for solvable problems. And the first thing is to soften our startup. We mentioned this earlier, not a
Mhm.
harsh startup. The soft startup is I feel, because I need, because I'm wondering, not you statements, not you are never here, you always. So it's remembering the I statements. Number 2 is to learn to make and receive repair attempts to move towards your partner. This may be to apologize. This may be to sit down and respectfully talk about the issue. Appreciation can help you move towards your partner. You can remind yourself of 5 positive things about your spouse instead of focusing on the negativity. Try to bring up the appreciation piece, being grateful, and this will help soften your position. The third thing is to go to the balcony to calm ourselves, right? We need to calm ourselves. Go to the balconies, a term used in couples counseling. It means just to take a breather if you need to. Even if you don't have a balcony, that's okay. Just leave the room, take a walk, deep breathing, listen to music. It's just really important to be able to control ourselves when we're triggered. Now, number 4 is learn to compromise. Now, this takes humility and surrender. Um, and number 5 is to process any past grievances. You may need to speak to a pastor or a therapist. Forgiveness may be difficult, but it powerfully heals our relationships.
That's so moving, and it calls to mind a story regarding my mother and father. They were married 54 years,
Oh, wow.
and my mom was a terrible driver, like the worst driver. She hit a mailbox once and told my father, word for word, this is just verbatim, I don't know where it came from. So my dad was beside himself, and him and I were talking, and he goes, imagine Antarctica in South America. And I go, Poppy? He goes, just imagine it. And he raised his voice. That is your mother and I, 2 different
Oh
continents.
my goodness.
And after
And
he
mhm.
vented and got it off his chest, he said, what really helps our marriage is my ability and her ability to walk away. So speaking to number
Oh,
3, going to the
oh,
balcony and
wow.
going back to compromise and forgiveness has really marked their
Mhm.
relationship, being able to let
Wow.
go.
Wow, that's wonderful. So you had it modeled for you. You saw it right before
Absolutely.
your eyes. That's one. And they were married over 50 years, you said. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
they were
a
married over 50 years, and they definitely embodied the perpetual
uh-huh.
problem. Like there were
Uh-huh.
just certain things that were in their
Mm-hmm.
temperament, and they worked it out through compromise and through
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
devotion of I love
Mm-hmm.
you and I'm getting to know you and I know this is what you need, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
reciprocated.
That's right. Yeah, it can be done.
It
It's
can be
we
done.
need to be intentional, like with anything in life. We need to be intentional.
Absolutely.
Um, so it's really important to note that Dr. Gottman's research lines up with what we are taught in the Bible. I wanted to share a verse in Proverbs. Proverbs 15:1 says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a
Mm,
harsh word stirs up anger. Right? This speaks exactly to the point where we were talking about the harsh startup versus a soft startup.
absolutely.
Ephesians 5 also talks about love and respect, and Jesus commanded us to treat others the way you want to be treated. Just a thought to remember, our spouse is not our enemy. Even when in the middle of an argument, it can seem and feel like they are. That's why it's important, as you saw in your family, go to the balcony, calm ourselves before speaking, because once the words are out of our mouth, we can't take them back. We can apologize, but it's so much better not to have said the disrespectful, disparaging remarks in the first place.
Absolutely.
Right. And those who are masters at marriage relationship are those couples who have learned to communicate deeply with each other without criticism, contempt, defensiveness, or stonewalling. They have learned to negotiate and compromise. The first step to this is desiring to learn conflict resolution. The research is clear. Conflict can be resolved or at least understood if the right steps are taken. And this research lines up with what God has said. Proverbs 22:3 cautions us: a prudent man sees danger and takes refuge. The simple keeps going and suffer for it. So if you identify with any of these negative patterns, please don't keep going. If you see danger and you want to restore your marriage relationship, please seek out help. Nobody has a perfect marriage, but many times our marriages can definitely improve. A healthy marriage takes a lot of work, like anything else that's worth having. It will require something from you. And I want to leave you with this, and it's really important. A good marriage doesn't just happen, it requires something from you. But help and hope is available.
Well said, Carmine. Just good stuff overall. So much
Thank
to
you.
digest and reflect over. So glad you could be with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Mario. It's been my pleasure.
Absolutely. And with that, it's time to close out this show. Thank you, Carmine, for joining us today. We hope that you were able to process some of the information given and with time and introspection, incorporate it into your own relationship, your own marriages. And thank you all for joining us today. Again, if you joined this program midstream, you can find this show and others on podcasts at Wellspring on the Air or on our blog on wellspringmiami.org. The title of today's show again was Conflict Resolution. Encourage us and let us know you are listening by sending comments or questions to ontheair@wellspringmiami.org. It's time to wrap up. This is Mario Armas with Wellspring on the Air, because hearts and minds matter.